Hey everyone, Wags here from Eagle Dynamics. And later this month, with the release of Supercarrier, we're naturally going to have some included missions, but we also realize that many of you are itching to create Supercarrier missions in the mission editor. So I wanted to create a little video to kind of go over the process here and talk about some of the best practices to get the best results. So this is going to be a rather long and very much unscripted video to help explain that. First, we'll go to the mission editor. We'll go create new mission. We have our maps here. Let's go stay with the Persian Gulf map. Coalition preset, we'll go with modern, and OK. Load it in. OK, so here we are in our trusty Persian Gulf map. And the first thing you want to think about is the general scenario you're trying to build rather than kind of do it on the fly. So for this little scenario, what I'll do is I'll have a carrier battle group here in the Arabian Gulf. We'll have a bar cap of Hornets out there, an E2 Hawkeye, an S3 tanker, and a 2-ship with a player doing a strike on Bondry Jask. Pretty straightforward. Selecting the ship icon here on the left toolbar, we'll left click where we want the initial starting point of our carrier battle group to be. Let's go here. And we see we have a stylized carrier icon in the middle. The red ring is the maximum engagement range for the surface to air weapons, and the yellow ring is the maximum acquisition range. Coming to the naval group window, let's give it a name. So how about carrier battle group? So a CVVG. Country will be USA. We have one ship in the entire group, which is the Theodore Roosevelt. What if we go type? We see we also have the Lincoln and the Washington available as well, and more will be coming after early access. But we'll keep it the Roosevelt for now. Unit name, let's call it a CVN. Skill, excellent. And coming down, we have our frequency. In this case, it's 127.5 on the AM modulation. And at least initially, this will be the single frequency that will control all ATC for the carrier, be it Marshall, Approach, LSO, and so on. Coming down, we have buttons for the waypoint add, edit, and delete. But above that, we have the carrier speed. Right now, it's 11. Let's change that to 15 knots. And when doing a carrier mission, we want to have between 20 and 30 knots going down the deck. Obviously 15 is below that, but what we'll do here in a minute is we'll use a wind component to make up that difference. Now, with the add button selected, if we left mouse button click on the map, it'll set the navigation point for that carrier group. We can make as many as we want, and we can see also that we retain that 15 knots. So next, we want to make sure the carrier has a TACAN as well as an ICLS assignment. So let's go back to the first waypoint. And we see we have activate TACAN at 1x. I don't like that. So let's go ahead and either change it by double clicking on the line here or hitting the edit button. Activate TACAN. Let's give it a name just so we can remember. So how about TCN CVN. Copy paste. We'll keep it as X-ray, and to be Captain Obvious, I'm going to go ahead and make that 71. Call sign. So the nickname of the Roosevelt is Rough Rider. So let's do something like RHR. And the unit will tie into the unit name up here. So the TACAN is tied to this unit now on CVN. In a very similar way, we're going to go ahead and now do the ICLS. So from type, we'll go to perform command. From the action, we'll select activate ICLS. And as before, let's go ICLS CVN. Copy, paste. And it's a WAGS thing. I tend to go 11 because that's what I remember. And as before, unit-wise, we'll go to the CVN as well. And for the love of sweet baby Jesus, it's always a good idea to go to your briefing and note these either in the situation or the task. So in this case, we'll go TCN 71X ICLS 11. And that's going to make life a lot easier for anyone who flies your mission later on. And as always, save often. So let's go save as. Test 1's fine. Keep it there. Now, as I talked about before, we want to make sure we have some wind over the deck. So we'll go to the weather icon. And we see we're at the 21st of June at 0800 hours. Let's get up a little bit earlier and go 0700. Temperatures at 20 C. Let's add some pretty little clouds on the canvas at 10,000 feet. Thickness, let's go full. Density 0 being clear skies. 9 and 10 being socked in. I'll go happy medium at 5. Precipitation, either rain in the above freezing, snow below freezing. We'll keep that none. Our air pressure, and now we have the 4 bands of the winds, and the one we're really paying attention to is the lowest one at 33 feet. So with the ship moving at 15 knots, we need at least 5 knots to bring it up to 20. But let's actually make it a happy medium of 25. So let's add 10 knots with the wind direction blowing, I don't know, about here. And a happy way to check that is we'll go to the measuring tool, left mouse button, hold and drag, and we can see it's actually 133 degrees. Go back to the weather tool, off by 5, so 133. And if you want, you can go crazy, add turbulence, fog, dust, whatever fills your boots. So what's a battle group without some escorts? Let's add some ships. So on the units, we'll add 1 unit. And we'll make this a Ticonderoga cruiser. Add another one. And we'll make that an Arleigh Burke. And we'll make the 4th one also a Burke class. But as you can see, this is not a very interesting formation, nor very useful. So you have some options. You could do some research and create some very realistic battle group formations. Or in this case, what I'll do is I'll actually use placements of the ship to act as visual aids for a landing. In this case, how about a case 1 landing, in which when you're on the downwind leg, you want to have your aircraft beam the BRC 1.1 to 1.4 nautical miles. And what we can do is we can place a ship at that location to help you align yourself. So again, let's go to the measuring tool, measure out around 1.2 miles, which is about there. Try to remember that and move that ship here. Let's see how close I got. That's close enough. So now when they're coming to downwind, you can kind of line yourself up here to know your beam distance. The other one is your port hold, which has a 5 nautical mile radius. Let's put a ship at the 5 mile radius line as well. It's right about there. And we'll put this last one behind the ship at, again, around 5 miles or so. And once you do that, if you take the carrier, you can move it around and everything will stay in relation to the carrier. And you can also see that our engagement acquisition range is expanded pretty dramatically there. Okay, now the next step is populating the aircraft deck. And this consists of a combination of static objects, AI objects or units, and of course player/client units. We'll first go over the statics. And the key about the statics is it's all about the balance. Meaning that on one hand, it's natural that you want to put as many statics as you possibly can to make it look super crowded, alive, and realistic. And that's all well and good if you have a good system, you have clients that are going to join in and have good systems, because the more units you put on the deck, the more overhead and polygons it's having to render. There's really no way around that. It's not magic. So you need to also balance that too with the placement of those units. You have a lot of units out there blocking, padding, or spawning points that could also cause havoc. So you really want to balance and be careful with the placements of the units. So I'm going to go over a setup that's usually rather conservative, but also very safe for even a large mission. So for the statics, let's close the sucker down. We'll go to the static icon. And the category we're interested in are the deck equipment, helicopters, planes, and personnel. We'll start with the deck equipment. And we have one of the tugs. And it's simple as selecting it, placing it where you want, and linking it. in this case to CVN, meaning that if you're placing a static object on airfield, well, obviously airfield is not moving, so it doesn't really need to be attached to it. But if you place it on the carrier, and unless that carrier is at a 0 speed, the two are not tied together, so that static object's going to do very strange things. So you want to make sure you link the unit to the carrier every time for every static object. You can also use the wheel here to adjust its facing. Let's add another one. And let's do a 32A this time. Again, link the unit. Next unit, we have the big honking crane. Now with the crane, you want to be a little careful here. Just like in placing a static unit on a hardened aircraft bunker on an airfield, as you probably have noticed, if you do that, rather than having that static unit appear inside the bunker, it's going to appear on top of it. Same thing happens here on the carrier. If you place a unit where it's overlapping some structure, it's going to be on top of that structure. So you really want to keep that in mind. So with the crane here, of course, always link it. Let's set good facing, but we want to make sure that we're placing it such that one, it's behind the foul line, this red and white stripe, but also not overlapping superstructure anywhere. And this location is a pretty safe one right there. And let's do one more. Let's do the fire truck. So back to statics. The P25, which is usually up forward here near the bow. And just want to make sure we have it, again, behind the foul line, but generally ahead of the pole here. And link it. Next element, of course, is the deck crew. And there's a lot of different deck crew options. And as I was saying before, you can go really hog wild and put a lot of these down, but just be mindful of the numbers of impact on performance and also routing of aircraft around the deck. So back to the statics. Go to the category of personnel. And we have the air boss. We have different LSO versions. Let's go with number 1. Placing here down by the station. We'll have him looking over the stern. We'll tie him up. And let's give him a friend. We'll make him LSO number 2. Linked. And have him facing towards the bow. But of course the carrier has its full range of skittles, and let's take a look at those. So again, back to statics. Personnel. We have our carrier technicians. Paint schemes, and here we have blue, brown, green, purple, red, white, and yellow. And this is where you can, place, all around the deck. And again, at logical locations that make sense that are behind foul lines. You really don't put them on the elevators. And in general, for all the statics, we found it best, try to avoid placing them forward of the island on the starboard side along here, because this is where a lot of spawning is going to be happening, as well as aircraft essentially despawning by going on the elevator and then going into the hangar area. Let's do an example. So let's go put a green shirt here by the crane, just as an example. And the final element of the statics, of course, are the static aircraft. And like I mentioned before, I try to avoid the elevators, obviously in the landing area, on the catapults, this area here, and forward of the island on the starboard side. But there's some areas we can still go with. Let's take a look at that. So we'll go to statics, planes. And with the Hornet, we actually have 2 different versions we can use. We have the older version here, which has much fewer polygons than the current one. So if you have a potato machine, this is one option you could use to increase frame rates. Then of course we have the more current version here. And we'll plop him down. Again, we'll link the unit to the carrier. And notice that we did that, the wings automatically folded. What we want to do is, again, we want to make sure that the landing gear is on the boat, but that the nose and the other elements are behind the foul line. So close, but not quite yet. That's good. Let's give him 3 buddies. Link it, rotate it, and 1 more. Link it, rotate it. And another place you can put a horn is actually right here. Again, don't put it on the elevator, but you can put it in this area and keep the nose behind the foul line here. And also, if you're doing a smaller multiplayer mission or a single player mission, you could put a lot more of these down. Actually, on the elevators and other places. But this is actually a very conservative population, which would work well for, say, like a 60-player multiplayer mission. Next, let's put an E2 down as a static. Back to statics, planes. Come up to E2. Let's go with the tiger tails. We'll place him here. Linked, rotated. And for fine control, you can also change its direction by single degrees. Again, just behind the foul line. And we want to put some S3s over here. And the S3, the SH60 we'll place here. And like the S3, we'll be working on some more updated models for those, of course. So we want to go to helicopters now. SH60. CVN, turn around. And give him a friend. Linked. That's good. So that's again, a very conservative but safe population of the deck for a very large multiplayer mission. The next step now, of course, is to add some AI aircraft. Let's do that. So go to the aircraft icon, plop one down. Let's give it a name. Let's do the bar cap first. Barrier Combat Air Patrol. So bar cap, USA, Combat Air Patrol. Make these some Hornets. Here we have the different skill levels. Let's go with random. For the Hornets, let's go with start with 300. Go to the loading now. We'll give him this loadout. And note that his frequency is 305. And we'll give him a wingman. And we'll make him 301. Number 3 will be 302. Oops. And number 4 will be 303. And they have a call sign of, let's give them Ford. So what happens is when the ATC is talking to an aircraft, they're going to be talking to them based on their tail number or side number. Whereas when they're talking to AWACS, they'll be referring to them with their call sign. Come back out. And we come back down. Now we have the waypoint type. So this can be either start in the air, a turning point, takeoff from runway. In this case, we'll be actually taking off from the catapults. Takeoff from ramp, which would be having them start in the parking locations, but cold and dark. And then take off from parking hot, which also is starting from the parking area, but the engines are all up and running, as well as the systems. In this case, let's have them all take off from the catapult first. Let's go to add waypoint. And departure standard is 7 miles out at 500 feet. Let's take a look at that. go measuring tool, see how close I got. Oh God, not even close. So let's go back, maybe more about there. 5, a little bit more. And that should be fine. So it'll be departing at 500 feet at 250 knots. Add, and it'll arc him out to his cap position at 25,000 feet at 350 knots. And then he'll orbit between waypoint 2 and waypoint 3. So we go back to 2. We go to advanced waypoint actions, add, perform command. Action is, perform task. Action is orbit. And he'll orbit at 350 knots. And he'll stop that task or stop orbiting and continue on after a duration of 2 hours. He'll probably go bingo first. Next waypoint, and then we'll put a endpoint back near the carrier. I'll make that his ending point. That's our bar cap. Next, let's put in the E2. So back to aircraft. Give it a name, E2. Aircraft type. Oh, I hit helicopters. There we go. Aircraft type. E2. Automatically AWACS. I can't remember what the range of tailco is for an AWACS. Let's guess 700. Also on 305. Actually, let's make that 307. Plonk him down. Actually, do it again. And for him, let's give him a hot start. And also out to about 7 miles at 500 feet at 250 knots. And have him arc out to have him orbit between 2 and 3. So again, back to 2. Advanced waypoint actions, add, perform task is orbit. Let's have him orbit at 200 knots and have him complete that after 4 hours to head back. Add back to the carrier and set that as a landing point. Next is the tanker. So again, aircraft, plonk, a name S3, aircraft type. And again, like the SH-60, we'll be adding a new unit type for this. Again, not sure. Let's guess 500. Call sign Texaco, let's make that Arco. And like the E2, we'll have him parking hot out to 7 miles or so, 500 feet, 250 knots. And we'll have him go to port and have a tanker hold station between 2 and 3. So back to 2, advanced, add, orbit at, say, 350, and have him be doing this for, again, 2 hours. After which he'll head to the next waypoint and land. Now the final one is when you have either launch or recovery operations, you also have a helicopter off the starboard side to fish in one out of the sea who had to punch out. So let's add him in there, add a little atmosphere. So at this point, helicopters, place him off the starboard. We'll call him SAR, search and rescue. Nothing. Helicopter type, SH-60. At an altitude of 100 feet, and the speed to match the carrier at 15 knots. And we'll put his waypoint parallel the carrier heading. That'll work. Okay, so now we have our AI set up, and the last big element for the aircraft is the player aircraft. So again, back to the aircraft icon, group name, call it player, USA, aircraft type, Hornets. We'll make this a pinpoint strike. Skill type now, oh, I need to place them first there. Skill type will go to player. Let's make the first tail code 400 with the call sign of Uzi 1 for the first aircraft. Again, frequency is 305. And well, let's do a cold start for this flight. So go to takeoff from ramp, add waypoint around 7 miles, 500 feet, 250 knots. Come out to here at about, let's say, 20,000 feet at 350 knots. And let's go down to the airfield and make a couple targets. So how about this building here? Again, we'll make that 0 feet. And how about this building here? Also 0 feet. And say back behind the carrier at 2,000 feet. And then the final one, recovery. Go back to our loading. Pinpoint strike. Let's do a JDAMs. Yeah, a couple of JDAMs would be nice. And add the wingman. We'll make him 401. And the last thing is the radio icon here. Let's go to that. And so channel 1 on COM 1 is 305, which is the aircraft channels. Let's make channel 2, I believe I set to 307 for the AWACS. And let's set COM 2 channel 1 at 127.5, which is the carrier COM. And again, this is also something you'd want to note here in the briefing. Last element, let's add a couple air defenses. Let's add a SA2 site. Let's go to a template, go to Iran, SA2 site, yeah, put it in here. There. And we'll make him visible so you actually see him on your situational awareness display. Let's add a smaller unit, like a mobile unit. So go to a ground vehicle. I'll place him here. Let's do a SA-13. And we'll go hidden. So you're not going to see him. Okay, let's save. And hit start. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so here we're on the deck. My buddy and me in the six-pack. We have the 4 Hornets, the bar cap on the catapult's getting ready to take off. And then we have the E2 and the S3 on the elevator. And I'll taxi out here in a minute. And then we have the statics we placed. And also we have the helicopter off to our starboard side. So that's a look at setting up a very basic supercarrier mission in the mission editor. I hope you're able to stick with me, and I hope this is useful as you start to create some missions for the supercarrier. And we very much appreciate all the great missions you guys do, because we cannot do it without you. And the additional content that you guys bring to it is absolutely invaluable. And thank you so much for that. Anyhow, take care, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.